Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton and Rico E. Anderson. My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are honoring Nichelle Nichols. How you guys doing today?
Doing great, thank you.
Awesome. So you know Cirroc Lofton, of course. He was Jake Sisko in Deep Space Nine. Rico E. Anderson is an actor who's no stranger to sci-fi. He was in Star Trek Renegades. Recently, he was in the Orville. He also did a thing or two in the JJ Trek movies.
I did.
How long have you been a Star Trek fan? Pretty much your whole life, or what?
Pretty much my whole life, yeah. I remember coming home from school, and we had those cartoon blocks that would be on from like, 3 to 5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there was a time when Star Trek was a part of that whole kids block. So being introduced to Star Trek for myself started with the original series, and just gravitated toward it from that, and also being a comic book fan, seeing those stories come out in comic book form as well. And of course, when the Next Generation kicked in, just having that whole new thing of stories to relate to, not to mention the movies as well. So it's always been a thing. It's always been there. And yeah.
So the original series came on as a part of the kids block?
Yeah, I mean, it was all in reruns, but it was in syndication. But yeah. It was part of that, because you had mostly cartoons, but you had shows like Star Trek. They used to have a lot of the Japanese shows like Ultraman, and I remember there was another one called Johnny Sokko and his flying robot, and it was something else. It was a few of them. Really dating myself here, but yeah, they were all kind of part of like the mixture of the live action, cool, nerdy stuff with the cartoons and stuff like that. But Star Trek was always part of that block.
You know, before we get into cartoons, first of all, I do want to say happy MLK Day to you guys. This is a really cool day for all of us, I think.
Right on, brother.
So, very much so.
I hope you guys have something fun and or enlightening planned for the day, and I'm glad that we could be
reparations, my brother. Reparations.
Coming straight out of that. No.
That's what we planning for tomorrow.
That's what we want.
Now you mentioned cartoons, and that did make me think of the animated series. Mm-hmm. Something I noticed in the animated series when I watched it is kind of the same thing as the original series movies, was that Nichelle was kind of more heavily featured in those than she was in the original series. And, she just kind of had a bigger role. Uhura had a bigger role in the animated series. And she also did the voiceover for multiple characters, not just Uhura. So I feel like her role and her career was expanding, and they were appreciating her more and more. And when you mentioned the comic books, I hadn't seen them or read them. I don't know if Cirroc has, but I was wondering, did she also have that expanded role in those as well?
I don't know the full-on 100% answer to that. I do know there were a couple of books that really featured her heavily.
Right.
I believe the comics did really give each character some great time to really help to expand the characters that we already know more. I remember there was a story in the books that dealt with something happening with the Enterprise being hit by some alien thing, and what a new concept. And apparently all the men were affected and all the women weren't. And Uhura was the top ranking officer. So while the men were like jacked up, she was like, I think, for command. So you saw Uhura, or at least you read about Uhura being in the captain's chair. And so yeah, they had that, which obviously is a rarity, because have we ever seen Uhura in the captain's chair outside of promo pics and convention pics and things like that? No, we haven't.
Not in any of the movies either, right?
None of the movies as well. No. Yeah.
Sulu was the farthest down the line they went. I don't think Chekhov or Uhura ever went in the captain's chair.
They did do something with Chekhov for a hot minute. I mean, obviously we know in Wrath of Khan he was first officer aboard the Reliant, but didn't they do something else where Chekhov was temporarily in command. Was it Undiscovered Country? It was something where he was in command for a hot second, and it may have been like to detract somebody from something happening.
Yeah, Cirroc, that's right?
I'm trying to place where exactly that was from.
That exact scene.
Definitely not in the first 2 seasons of Deep Space Nine that I can remember.
No.
Well,
let's she was gone by then.
Okay, all right.
Let's change the channel a little bit to Nichelle the person.
Mm-hmm.
Cirroc and I in the past have talked about, what she was like as a person and our experiences and memories with her. Would you like to share your experiences with her, Rico? Because you've had a few great memories with her, right?
I've had some wonderful memories, and I look forward to many more continued ones. My first time actually meeting Nichelle was actually at a rap party that George Takei threw for the play Equus that he did at East West Players. That's here in Los Angeles. It's an Asian American theater company here in Los Angeles. And my girlfriend at the time was one of the stage managers, and she knew how big of a Trekkie I was. And she said, "I got a surprise for you. We're going to a party on, I think it was like Sunday. It was one of the rap parties for the show." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I was like, "Well, what is it for?" She's like, "Well, it's for Equus, George's show." And I was like, "Oh, cool. That's so cool. I get the chance to meet George. Cool." I get to the house. It was at George's house. So I get to his house. We both get to his house, and I think Brad opened up the door, his husband, and greets us, and I'm meeting Brad, and then George comes up, I meet him, and he hugs my girl at the time, and says grab some food, and everybody's meeting in the next room.
Rico, can you do it in George's voice for us to picture it, please?
Hello. Nice to meet you. Rico, is it? Yeah. Please grab some food and meet everyone in the next room. It's so great to meet you. You're Shirley's boyfriend. Oh my. Love you. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's dead on. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause.
Nice.
One of my fewer wacky talents. So I start to walk in the room with the food, and as you're walking in, you're seeing people. And then right there to the left as I'm walking in, because you don't see her first as you walk in, is Nichelle. And I mean, I think my wheels locked in place, and I just kind of paused for a second. And it was like, and then I kept it going because I was like, all right, I don't want to be that guy. But I was just like, oh my God, it's Nichelle. This is wild. And so I sat like across from her, and she introduced herself. I introduced myself. We got to talking about this and that and the other. And I told myself,
did you
don't
pretend,
bring up Trek.
When she introduced herself, did you go, "Oh, Nichelle it is"? Oh, okay. Or were you
right?
I know.
What? Michelle? I'm sorry. Can you say your name again? Right. And you've done.
And I would know you from.
Right. You've done a couple of things, a couple of acting gigs. Okay, that's nice. That's cute. Yeah, no, and I made a point of not bringing up Trek because I didn't want to. I don't know. You sometimes when you hear it all the time. You talk about it all the time. It's always you know this. It's like you can't go to the store without somebody. Hey, boom, boom, boom. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing all the time, sometimes you just think, let me not go there. And I didn't go there. But Nichelle went there, and she started Star Trek. And, of course, that opens up the floodgates of, I guess we're talking about Star Trek now. And she started talking about her experiences. And it was just a wonderful conversation as a whole. Sweetest lady. This is years back. But just so sweet. We took a picture afterwards. She's like, send me the picture, email me the picture. And
Wow.
and it was so great meeting you. And it you know, I mean, everyone says how wonderfully sweet she is and kind, and that is her. She voluntarily talks about the things that she knows that people love about her, love that she's associated with, and she's just a really pleasant human being to be around. I've had the opportunity afterwards to, of course, as we all have, seen her at conventions, when I'm a guest at certain sci-fi conventions, well, more importantly, or I guess more directed, San Diego Comic-Con, I've been her table neighbor twice.
Wow.
Of course, we've all seen her at other conventions, of course, the Star Trek convention in Vegas, the Renegades premiere, various other events and things like that.
You notice how no matter how many conventions you see her at, she's always smiling. She's always happy. She's always having a good time.
I do. And you see how genuine it is. It's not fake. It's not anything other than just so happy to be around people who are literally all about that love and that camaraderie and that sense of community and things that we all share as people, as fans, as all of the above. So yeah, it's always wonderful to see her and to see that smile. It brings a smile to everybody's face. And
yeah. What comes to mind for me is the word elegant. Every time I see her, I think she's just so elegant. You know, she dresses in this very, just beautiful way, right? I mean, and she speaks clearly. She's very articulate. Mm-hmm. There's nothing ghetto about her, you know, mannerisms or upbringing or her language. She's just like a very refined, elegant, eloquent woman.
Yeah.
Now, Rico, you also have the privilege of doing something that very few Star Trek fans have had. You've actually had the opportunity to interview her once on stage, right?
Yeah, at Silicon Valley Comic-Con.
Yeah.
I had the honor of doing that. And when I found out that I was going to do that, of course, I'm going in my head, okay, what am I going to ask? What am I going to ask? And of course, one of the main questions that pops up on every interview is the question about her association with Dr. Martin Luther King, and who apparently was a Trekkie. And he made a point of mentioning that he and his family watched Star Trek, and they really enjoyed seeing the show, especially Nichelle there representing and being a part of that very diverse cast. And I started to ask her about it, and Nichelle, and I'm asking the question, I'm about to talk to her about it and about to dive into some of the bullet points of it. Excuse me. And I asked her to please give us the story. Nichelle up and flipped the script, and she looked at me and she said, well, why don't you tell it?
I was just going to say, I bet she never got tired of telling that story because she was always happy to tell it. But this apparently is the one time she was like, why don't you tell it? You know.
She's like, why don't you tell it? Yeah. And I was like, okay. And a huge laugh came from the audience.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, it started out with you wanting to quit the show to pursue a career more on stage, from my understanding on Broadway, and she's like, yes, and I was like, and I was like, yeah, okay, and you happened to have a conversation with Dr. King about it, yes, and he explained that he and his family were huge Trekkies. Wonderful to see her. And African Americans being portrayed so positively and beautifully and wonderfully in the future, especially of a sci-fi show. We're out in space. We're part of the exploration and the continuation of Human Guy. She's like, yes. I was like, and you decided at the end of the day you weren't going to quit the show because Dr. King said that It's important that you are a part of the show. And, and I just went on and on and on. And it was the funniest thing because, I mean, I wasn't really sizzling up there, but I didn't expect it. So, of course, you're throwing it out there as she's just like, and what else you got to say? And then after that, she totally started to elaborate on things. She started to talk more about on that story. But it was
so this was a personal conversation she had with Dr. King?
Yeah.
This was a personal conversation. Yeah. Apparently her and Dr. King's family were friends. And I don't know if that was on a real personal level or just because of the fact that at the time Nichelle was a part of a lot of different events. And of course, Dr. King was going all around doing speeches, going to events, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But they knew each other. And she expressed the fact that she, at first with Gene Roddenberry wanted to quit the show, and according to the story, he told her to give the weekend, take the weekend, think about it, and then let's talk on Monday. And then that's apparently when she had the conversation with Dr. King over the weekend, and then that's when Dr. King said, "You can't do that. Your importance to this show is more than I'm paraphrasing, but basically more than you realize, and it's important that we see that representation matters." He didn't say that, but basically, when you look at it today, that's a lot of where he was coming from.
He was given the perspective that it's bigger than just her. It's like this.
Exactly.
It changed it shaped history, honestly.
It really did. I mean, and she went back to Gene Roddenberry and said that she was going to stay. And actually piggybacking off what you're saying, Rob, I'm sorry, what's your name? Ryan. You blanked out for a second. Mr. Kinney. It did shape history in many, many different ways, from people that we see on TV to history as a whole in terms of representation of African Americans in so many different lights. But especially when it comes to television, where you didn't really see a whole lot of us African Americans on television. And when we were represented, we weren't always represented in the most positive of lights. We were in many instances, but we had a lot of instances where you didn't have that. So Uhura was one of those wonderful representations of the future, of us being a part of the future. And you look at TV shows today and you see the direct result of people like Nichelle, Diane Carroll, Sidney Poitier, and just a plethora of actors who were very prominent at that time and always visible on the screen. And if they weren't visible on the screen, they were visible at events that dealt with civil rights, that dealt with just equality. They were always there. They were always present. You look at Deep Space Nine, Cirroc, you and Avery Brooks are a direct descendant of those things that happen. And what's beautiful is the fact that you're seeing this beautiful father-son relationship being portrayed on screen, which could represent any father-son relationship. But the fact that you have a Black father-son relationship, a single Black father struggling to raise his child while trying to basically hold down a job and be a leader. I mean, it's no different than if we were on Earth and the story is still the same, except in your case, you're dealing with aliens and wars and, all the other crazy stuff that went down. But at the end of the day, that beautiful relationship between a Black father and his son is so important. Again, that representation mattered. And that's why you see what we see today in terms of a lot of the inclusion of African Americans and other people of color as well in the media, in television, film, things like is one big part of that. But that role that she played is definitely one of the biggest influences for what is represented with us today.
Yeah,
I think I said all that in one point.
No, that was awesome.
Thank you.
And I want to piggyback off of what you said, and you mentioned the future, and the big key for, one of the things Avery used to talk about a lot was seeing a brown family in the future. And the key to that, even with Dr. King, I'm sure, is that we're included in this vision of the future, that we are part of the vision of the future, and we are represented in the vision of the future. And I think Nichelle and Avery understood the significance of what it means to represent an entire race of people 400 plus years from now, 500 years in the future, right? Or the idea of us being a part of the future. And Avery always references that as far as that's what meant something to him. That's what brought him to work every day and made sure that he gave it his best, because he wanted to make sure he was laying down the right image of a brown man raising his child in the future. Because we know we're part of the past. We can see our origin in the past, from Egyptian civilization to Africans, different civilizations. We've been part of the past, and we can trace our root and origin in the past. But to know that we're part of the future, that's the big idea that lends itself to the now, for the brown people now today that are working through these times, trying to see themselves in the future. That is the same kind of positive hope that carried us through slavery, knowing that there was going to be a better day than the one that we were going through at that time. Saying, okay, we're slaves today, but one day my child's child won't be a slave.
Yeah.
And it was the hope of a better future that carries us through, right? In America, at least. So I think that when you look at that and you have people that understand the significance of that, like Nichelle, like Avery, and say, okay, I understand that. And I understand what it means in the long game, in the long picture of it, to represent this idea.
A lot of what Dr. King said when he said, I've seen the mountaintop. I mean, I get there with you. The mountaintop is a representation of that climb that continues to happen. And that climb, it starts, there's steps that always are being taken. Nichelle is one of many people who took those steps. And there was a saying that came out. I mean, it's not from the show itself, but it was featured very prominently in the show Blackish. And I love this saying: "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams."
Yes,
it's such a beautiful quote, because when you think about it, and when you think about our ancestors, especially when Cirroc, when you were mentioning slavery. We are the wildest dreams as a result of the future that is happening. And of course, when we all think of Nichelle, she as the person she is, but Uhura as the representation, the representative that she portrays, is also that wildest dream. And that's a beautiful thing.
She's a huge benchmark in the history of American civilization, with Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr. She's one of the biggest because she represented something that was different than what it was in the past. You mentioned the relationship between Jake and Captain Sisko and how important that was, and that the writers tried to handle it responsibly and to put it in such a good light. Do you think that Star Trek as a whole has addressed those kinds of issues responsibly for African Americans?
I think it has. I think we've had, even if they're not storylines that are directly saying this African American ... or Black people ... just the just the inclusion of us within the series, the characters that we've played, whether we're in prosthetic makeup or not, whether the storylines are directly reflecting or dealing with a specific Black issue, I feel like we've had wonderful representation and continue to have wonderful representation, even right down to the news series, to Discovery.
Right.
Look who one or the lead is. I mean, it's the lead is an African American woman.
That's the same as the lead for the Lower Decks animated series, going to be an African American woman as well. The captain is an African American woman, and the lead is an African American woman.
Okay, see, there you go. It's these are all direct results of things that have happened in the past, and that representation. Representation to me is so important throughout everything. I just growing up, when you see somebody that is like you, that is of your kin, that looks like you, that's directly from Africa, descended from Africa, from France, from wherever, you see that. When you hear somebody speaking French, you're like, hey, it's the little, there you go. I didn't do that. But you see that. I remember after Black Panther, there was this video going around of these two little Black boys, and they just come out of seeing Black Panther, and they saw the poster, and they're looking at all the characters on the poster, and he's like, that's me. No, that's me. That's me. That's such a beautiful thing to see, because, again, they're saying that's me because they're seeing themselves. When I was growing up, when I'm seeing various people especially just centering around sci-fi, people like Nichelle Nichols, people like Herbert Jefferson Jr., who played Boomer in the original Battlestar Galactica.
Rico, by the way, Rico and I call him Unky Herb because we always see conventions and at one of our favorite places in Studio City that we won't mention, he's always there. But good old Uncle Herb, man.
Yeah. He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Really is cool. Just just a hoot, and just really cool whenever you talk to him. But he was one of those people that when I saw him, I saw me. When I saw people, the people who were very prominent at the time.
Billy D. Williams on Star Wars was one.
Yeah, man. Billy. Billy. Yeah. I mean, even if you're not realizing that that's what's happening to you, it's happening to you even on a subconscious level. And as you grow older and you start to realize things, you realize how those presences affected you. So when you see a Nichelle Nichols, you're seeing someone of your skin tone, someone who's from the same cultural background as you are.
Yeah, and so you feel included. You feel included.
Yeah,
it makes you feel like you're being represented. It makes you feel like you're included in the narrative, in the storyline, in the idea, right? So
exactly.
That's the important part. When it's funny because when as kids, when we watch things, we walk away and we're so deeply affected by it. I remember watching Bruce Lee's karate movies when I was a kid, and I'd leave the theater chopping at everybody and try to do roundhouse kicks and everything.
Right.
So, you're so impacted.
When he took down Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Chuck Norris in like the same movie.
Yeah. So, you watch these movies and you're so impacted because it's like it affects you. You walk away feeling, like you've got a lifesaver in your hand, or like you can do karate moves or whatever it is. You feel energized, you feel inspired.
Yes.
And that's where, having these kinds of images are really important for the inspiration, so that everybody feels included. And just to add another thing, Nichelle had a dual barrier to go up against. Not just the fact that she's a Black African-American woman in America, African-American. That in itself, just being Black, has its own set of challenges. But as a woman, you have a whole nother set of challenges dealing with, you know, a masculine business and a male-dominated business in most every arena. So here she is breaking through the glass ceiling as a woman and as a Black person. And when you combine the two, it's just unprecedented. And I think that's what Martin Luther King saw. I think that's what we see. And to add to that is that she's such a great person off the screen. It's not just that she was a good actress, but that she's a good person and an intelligent person and a good spokesperson for what she went through, a good advocate for what she's trying to, you know, what she did. So I think it's important when you have people that are well-spoken, that are intelligent, be the ambassador for this kind of groundbreaking, you know, thought process.
Ambassador is a perfect word for that, because it's true. I mean, every time I've seen her, every time I met her, she's been nothing but love and positivity and eloquence. She truly is, still to this day, the most amazing, you know, memory of meeting somebody I've ever had personally. We've only got about 30 seconds left. We got to run real quick, but I did want Rico to touch on one final thing. Cirroc, when you were talking about how television and movies inspire us, I think that's what makes this so important, is that people around the world were seeing this. This was like an actual movement being done with the inclusion of somebody in a sci-fi show. And Rico, I was just hoping you could tell us a tiny bit of what, you know, overall, what you think Nichelle Nichols and Uhura has meant to our society.
You threw a hardball at the.
We asked the tough questions here.
See, my people didn't tell me about this.
In 5 seconds, please. In 5 seconds.
Excuse me. I will say that Nichelle deserves more credit than I feel like she has gotten throughout her career. I feel like she is definitely one of the unsung heroes of television, of Africa, as representations, representatives of African Americans in television. I feel like her contribution should be up there along with the ones who are well known, like Mr. Sidney Poitier, like Mr. Harry Belafonte, like Dorothy Dandridge, the Nicholas brothers. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Cicely Tyson, yeah.
Cicely Tyson. I mean, Cicely Tyson and Nichelle Nichols should basically be in the same tier as far as just everything that they have embodied, continued to embody. I will always speak and very highly and bring her name out there, and Nichelle's name out there, and just let people know. I think it's so important to continue to let people know who she is and what she's done, and have people realize that yes, she was a character in a sci-fi series. Not everybody likes sci-fi, and I think that's just odd that a lot of people don't like sci-fi. But the fact that that is her claim to fame as far as the best known as, oh man, it's a beautiful thing. And you know, I think she definitely has a solidified place within history as a whole, and I think it's just going to continue. It's going to continue, and I'm looking forward to taking it all in as we go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rico.
Thanks, guys.
Cirroc, if you've got a couple last words to add to that, feel free. I didn't want to jump in on that.
No, I just agree with Rico, and I think that it's important, by honoring the people that have paved the way for us, that it's important that the people who are now able to walk through those open doors pay homage to those people that opened the doors for them. So Holly Berry, Zoe Saldana, all these young people that are able to have a career as a leading woman, a Black leading woman, they can thank somebody like Nichelle Nichols, Sonequa.
Right.
They can thank Nichelle for paving the way for that to happen.
The best thing is, I think that they are aware of that.
Yeah.
I think they know.
This is the important, this is where it's really important to know your history, but specifically within the genre that we're all a part of, know your history within this entertainment community, because there are reasons why you are where you are at. The old saying, I'm paraphrasing, but because of you, I am.
Mm-hmm.
Because of you, I am. Because of Nichelle, I am. I said that in the interview with her, and it's so true. Because of Nichelle, I am. We all are.
Great.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Mr. Rico E. Anderson, thank you so much for joining us. He's also on Apple TV on a show called
Truth Be Told.
Go ahead. We're listening. Okay.
That is the name of the show.
You can also see him as a Mocklin doctor in the Orville. Hopefully he'll be a Mocklin again sometime soon.
Fingers, toes, and eyes crossed. If I can also do one quick plug as well, my horror film Get Gone is being released this coming Friday, starring myself, Lynn Shay, Robert Miano, who is actually a guest star on Deep Space Nine as well. One episode took place in the holodeck. I think Vic Fontaine's club. He played one of the gangsters in that.
What's the name of this movie? Get Gone?
Get Gone. Mm-hmm. It's a horror thriller, and it's coming out this Friday. Sony Pictures just bought it, and and I'm the hero of the film. I'm the hero of the film.
I don't think I can.
Wow.
You can do it, Ryan.
You can be a hero.
You told me I have to go to your place and actually watch it with you. Now I know why you wanted me to watch it with you.
That's why he's starring in it, and he's the hero.
And bring sarsaparilla.
You can
real quick. One last thing.
What do you think? Pretty good, right? Go ahead.
The director, Michael Thomas Daniel, a white man, approached me and said, I wrote this part for you in mind because I'm sick and tired of Black people being the first to die in a horror film.
No.
That doesn't really happen, does it?
Yeah.
No,
it doesn't happen in sci-fi either.
Yeah. You know, we're basically the red shirts in any situation in a horror film.
Change your shirt.
So we'll be on the lookout for that, for the Get Gone movie.
Yes, please do.
All right.
Truth be told, in the Orville. Thanks very much, Mr. Rico Anderson, for Cirroc Lofton, for Mr. Aron Eisenberg, Nichelle Nichols, Russ Hasledge, Ryan T. Husk. Always remember the seventh rule.